It's been 50 years since world leaders and environmental experts met at the Stockholm Conference to advocate for better management of the environment. The Stockholm Conference, held under the slogan "Only One Earth," and later culminated into the designation of June 5th as World Environment Day by the United Nations. Now, 50 years down the lane, the slogan "Only One Earth" has been reignited to celebrate the 2022 edition of the World Environment Day, a time calling for humans to live more sustainably in harmony with nature. In today's edition of the program Planet Rise, we shall be talking to some experts with experience in different fields as far as environmental protection is concerned. You're watching Planet Rise on Canal d'Or International. We shall be right back. Our guests in today's edition of the program have made their mark in different fields of environmental protection. They have gone out of their way to secure a better environment for the future generation. I'm going to start with my left. He is an industrial engineer, equally doubles as the VURI Divisional Delegate for Environment, Nature Protection and Sustainable Development. I have the pleasure to welcome on this set Mr. Lemnu Albon William Banye. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation on this special edition of the program Planet Rise on Canal d'Or International.
Thank you so much, Regine, for
It's a
having me.
pleasure to have you.
It's always a pleasure to come around to discuss on environmental issues. Thanks.
And on my right, I equally have someone who is the Director General of a leading recycling company here in the nation's economic capital, Douala. He is Mr. Chris Mabiala. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation on Planet Rise.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
And on my extreme right, we have someone who has been working tirelessly to recycle organic waste for the production of protein and organic fertilizer. He is the Managing Director of Eco Technology, Mr. Aaron Egwe Okesak. Thank you so much for joining us in today's edition of the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, let's set the ball rolling with you, Mr. William. I would like to turn right back to you. Cameroon is joining the rest of the world to celebrate the World Environment Day at a time when the environment is faced with multiple problems. Now, you are the divisional delegate for environment for VURI, and you're equally an industrial engineer. When you look at our environment today, what would you say are some of the biggest threats the environment faces?
First of all, thank you, Regine, for that question. I would like to say, I think celebrating 50th year of the World Environment Day says clearly that it was the right decision to take to commemorate and take measures to say we have only one Earth. Like you rightly said, from the onset, it was the slogan at that time was One Earth. That was the first slogan which was brought up in 1972 when the world leaders met in Stockholm in 1972, the 5th of June, to celebrate World Environment Day.
Okay.
And at that time, it was noticed that certain resources were being used but not renewed. And so it was important to start thinking of the importance of consuming but sustainably.
Okay.
And as you rightly say, now when we look at the environment today, we are beginning to see that it was right for world leaders to have taken that decision 50 years back. Because what are we noticing today? Climate change is skyrocketing and the global temperature is increasing, and the effect of climate change is being felt by everybody in the world.
Weathers are unpredictable.
Yes. And we're having pollution which affect the air, the soil, and even the waters. And we're having land degradation too that is really going at a level where in a place like Douala, all of this is being felt. We are in a town, an estuary town, which beside the sea, and we are facing all of those challenges: pollution, climate change problems, and land degradation with the disappearance of numerous species. We are having, for example, the case of mangroves. We are a town which is protected by some species like the mangrove, which
is the barrier between land
of the rivers and so on, which helps actually preserve the waters from getting into the land.
Town, yeah.
And this is being chopped off and used up by the population without being renewed. At the world level, it has even been noticing that we're consuming every year about 1.6 amount of earth every year, and which is like using more budget than what you earn. And unfortunately, we here, like we're having in the universe billions of galaxies, and in each galaxy we're having billions of planets, but we have only one Earth.
And now, talking about the problems the environment faces today, I'm going to turn back to my right to Mr. Chris Mobiala. You are the Director General of a leading recycling brand here in Douala, and one of the biggest promoters also of the circular economy. Yes. Now, plastic pollution constitutes a major menace to the environment, and you decided to delve into this sector. First of all, tell us, what have you seen on the field as far as plastic pollution is concerned, and also tell us why you decided to delve in this area.
Okay, I will express myself in French.
That's totally fine. That's fine.
Le plastique, quand il a été découvert, a été plutôt quelque chose de positif au départ, puisque c'est lui qui a permis de lancer l'industrie. C'est quelque chose de solide, de léger, donc ça a lancé l'industrie, spécialement l'industrie agroalimentaire. Le problème, c'est que on ne sait pas le recycler, on n'a pas su le recycler convenablement. Je vais juste donner quelques chiffres clés. Sur les 9 milliards de tonnes de plastique qui ont été produits, jamais produits, on a recyclé seulement 9%. Et ça pose des problèmes non seulement pour l'environnement, mais aussi pour notre santé aujourd'hui. Je vais vous donner un exemple. Un être humain, donc nous sur ce plateau, nous ingérons, donc nous mangeons environ 5 grammes de plastique par semaine. Donc l'équivalent d'une carte de crédit. Et donc le problème de plastique est mondial, majeur, et principalement chez nous. Il y a d'autres sociétés qui sont plus ou moins avancées dans le recyclage, dans le tri, mais nous aujourd'hui, le problème de plastique est encore entier. Il suffit de se balader dans quelques drains où on se trouve avec des quantités énormes de plastique. Heureusement que le gouvernement et les autorités comme M. Lemni ici nous accompagnent dans l'initiative de recycler et nous donnent les moyens de pouvoir le faire de façon efficace.
And if I got you right, you said out of the amount of plastic produced, just 9% is recycled. What accounts for this low rate of recycling, despite the opportunities that exist?
Alors, c'est simplement que aujourd'hui, le plastique, il y a des plastiques qui sont encore non recyclables, au-delà du fait que on commence aujourd'hui à trouver des techniques de recyclage qui sont de plus en plus avancées, notamment à l'époque, dans un passé récent, on n'était pas capable de recycler des mélanges de plastique, aujourd'hui on y arrive. Donc c'est quelque chose qui avance, donc on va en recycler de plus en plus, mais aujourd'hui c'est encore un problème.
Okay, I'm going to turn right to Mr. Aaron Egwe, and you are into the recycling of organic waste to produce protein and organic fertilizer. This is something that is not very common. Tell us more about your activity.
Yes, our activity consists of using the black soldier fly, which is it's not so common. It's similar to the house fly, but it has the difference in that in adult age it doesn't fit. That's why we don't see it common in the environment. And we leverage that fly because in the larva stage they consume highly. They can consume up to 25 times their body weight. So that's a very good, that's a powerful force of the fly we can explore.
Okay.
What brought us to Cameroon and Africa in general to apply this technology?
Okay.
In the West, in Europe, they are starting leveraging this technology in a very efficient way.
Okay.
In Africa, what do we see? We saw that we have a huge potential that's been wasted. For example, we went to the Sandaga market, which is Sandaga.
The Sandaga market,
Sandaga market,
here in Douala.
Here in Douala, everybody knows it's a huge area for vegetable.
Okay.
And we discovered that about 40% is being wasted.
Exactly, when you go to the market, and this is as a result of the fact that they don't have preservative methods. Most of the women who sell, if you don't succeed to sell your vegetable or your tomatoes, maybe the day is brought, by the next day or day, 2 days after, it starts getting rotten. Especially also because most of these vegetables are cultivated with chemical fertilizer. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Absolutely, and that's one of the resources we end at we have as a byproduct of our process. Alors, we discovered that these are resources that are being wasted.
Okay.
By recycling them, we reintroduce back in the consuming chain.
Okay.
Ingredients that otherwise would have been wasted. So what do? We collect this waste. We have talked with those who manage the market, and they're very enthusiastic with the project. And luckily, the delegate is helping us in that regard. So we have discussed with them. We have put in place a structure where we collect this waste. We match them, means we grind. We have put on machines that we grind. And these flies, we use their egg, which are now being incubated inside this ground waste.
Okay.
And this, in the space of 15 days, they reach maturity. So we can see the very short cycle. Our structure has been put in fact that with the capacity of recycling that initially programmed, recycling 10 tons of organic waste to produce 2.5 tons of this protein.
Okay.
In this protein, we get the protein, as we say, and the organic fertilizer.
Okay.
It means in our process we have zero waste.
Wow, that's quite interesting.
Yes, zero waste in the sense that they are left over. That's organic fertilizer, and now the larvas have been harvested, dried, and matched for mac meal.
Okay, and how do these processes help in protecting the environment?
Okay.
What's the contribution of your activity in promoting sustainable development, in promoting the circular economy?
Firstly, this organic waste is being left in the environment to rot, and when it rots, it produces methane, which is more dangerous than even CO2. Carrying them away.
So it's helping in the fight against global warming?
Global warming. Okay. Secondly, Cameroon imports large quantities of fish meal because our mac meal is a good substitute to fish meal, which is being used in the livestock industry for feeding.
Feeding.
Yes, for feeding animals. Perfectly aquaculture.
Okay.
Which reduces the cost of production because at that level we don't need to transform it. We can feed the fishes live. That's one part. The second part, this large quantity of fish meal are being imported, largely from Brazil.
Okay.
So you can imagine the huge cost of transportation from that site, which are those fish,
which can be made here,
which can be made locally.
Yes, I think we're going to have time to talk about the benefits, but I would like to turn back to Mr. William now. Plastics packaging of less than 60 microns were banned by the Cameroonian government in 2012, and the law actually went into force in 2014. But 8 years down the lane, what we notice is these plastics have continued to circulate, and they end up on the streets, end up in the on waterways, and contribute to flood. My question to you, Mr. William, what do you have to say to people who say the government has failed in managing the problem of plastic?
Well, I will first of all give a quick answer to say the government hasn't failed because the first thing is that it has produced, this regulation produced many recyclers who came into business because this was not something that we used to see before. I think if you have the colleague who was talking about collection of plastic, he came in because of that enabling environment. The second thing is that the quantity of the plastic you find in the environment would have been more than what you have now if that regulation didn't come up. Because the quantity of less than 60 microplastic that you see in the environment is not more as much as what you used to see before. What we see now more is the plastic bottles.
Okay.
Now, the other issue is that if we seem to see that it has failed, or we think that it is really not working, it's because the actions we are taking and we are still sanctioning. If you see continuously on news, we keep on tracking those
confiscating
who are smuggling
and destroying
these plastics which are produced out from Cameroon and imported and smuggled by people. That action is still continuing. And of course, what is happening
What is disturbing though is this moment we see plastics, tons of plastics confiscated by the Ministry of Environment, even actually destroyed. But the next moment you still find people.
Actually,
what is promoting this illegal trade in plastic?
Exactly, that's a good question. What they're promoting is simply the fact that we have not started addressing the individuals.
Okay.
That is, and that is the next step. And watch out, that will start very soon. You will soon see us at the entrance of every market or everywhere, where you'll be asked to pay a fine if you find with a single-use plastic, like the one of 60 micron, which has been banned. All along, we have never sanctioned people like it has been done in other countries. You go to other countries like Rwanda, even Chad, you see many people. You just seen with one single-use plastic like this, still less than 6 micron, you are sanctioned to pay about 5,000 to 10,000 francs.
Okay.
So the fact that we have not been sanctioning people who use it has encouraged the buying, and many actually go as far as saying, give me a plastic, give me a second plastic, insisting on this plastic that has been banned.
I think there is a bigger problem here, because there is also the individual. People do not understand, correct me if I'm wrong, that they have a responsibility to better manage their plastics, to better manage their environment. There is this feeling, people think protecting the environment is the job of others, but we all live in the environment. We are benefiting from the resources on the environment. Our future and that of our children depend on it. But there is this kind of inertia on the part of the population. Why do you think people are so hesitant to adjust to measures like the ban of plastic?
Actually, I would say they are ignorant. They all are aware. I want to tell you, all along my career, I've been working on waste. I've been shocked by certain things. They actually have people. You see, these are people who collect plastics and food waste. You'll be surprised to hear that if they come and knock at your door to start collecting plastics or start collecting food waste, someone will ask them to buy it from them. So which they know clearly that if they don't collect it, they will throw it on the street. So this is the mentality. They know. What we have noticed that works in our environment is sanction.
Sanction.
Yes. When you sanction somebody, take for example, from the time they started sanctioning people who park their cars on the wrong areas.
People are not forced to.
People park their cars.
I'm going to turn back to Mr. Chris, and the question I'm coming back to ask you is, I'm going to try in French. Comment est-ce que vos activités aident les Camerounais à mieux gérer le problème des déchets plastiques? Quels sont vos défis?
Alors, très bien. Alors, je vais rapidement rappeler ce que nous faisons, et j'ai une pensée pour Monsieur Nameni qui a fondé cette société. Alors, nous sommes un acteur majeur de l'économie circulaire.
D'accord.
Et dans l'économie circulaire, nous avons 3 notions principales. Nous avons évidemment l'économie, mais ce n'est pas la plus importante. Nous avons le social et l'environnement.
Okay.
Donc, nous intervenons dans la chaîne de recyclage complète. Donc, nous commençons par la collecte. Et notre collecte se fait on a différentes sources. Donc on a les entreprises où on récupère leurs déchets, on a les associations ou les ménages donc, qui nous ramènent leur plastique via rémunération, ou alors nous avons des écobines que nous déposons un peu partout dans la ville avec l'aide justement du ministère de l'Environnement.
D'accord.
Et une fois ce plastique collecté, nous l'emmenons dans notre ville où il est trié, et s'ensuit une phase de transformation où ils sont broyés et transformés en produits finis. Nous avons des feuillards plastiques, donc si vous voyez les ballots de friperie, les sangles qui permettent de les emballer, et bientôt nous allons faire des palettes plastiques. Et comment nous aidons la population? Nous aidons la population via nos actions de collecte. Alors je vais d'abord parler du social. Aujourd'hui, il y a des associations qui se constituent, qui collectent du plastique via rémunération. Donc ça, c'est la première chose. La deuxième, nous faisons de la sensibilisation, et donc nous allons dans les écoles, dans les marchés, dans les lieux publics, faire de la sensibilisation. Et l'année dernière, nous avons sensibilisé à peu près 11 000 personnes sur les problèmes de la pollution plastique. D'autre part, nous invitons les ménages à faire le tri. Alors aujourd'hui, le tri n'est pas encore quelque chose d'instinctif, mais via les namébins que nous installons, puisque ils sont exclusivement faits pour du plastique, ça commence à venir, la population commence à avoir de plus en plus le réflexe d'aller mettre leur plastique dans les namébins.
Et cette activité, c'est rentable?
Alors,
est-ce que c'est durable? Ça va tenir pour longtemps?
Oui, ça tiendra forcément. Alors nous avons plusieurs défis qui sont d'une part structurels et d'autre part contextuels. Aujourd'hui, collecter du plastique à Douala, on a certains défis comme par exemple, nous sommes situés à Bekoko et nous avons parfois des bouchons qui arrivent. Donc un camion qui peut être prévu pour aller dans 3 endroits de collecte peut parfois se limiter à faire une seule collecte de la journée parce qu'on a eu des difficultés logistiques qui ne sont pas de notre fait forcément. D'autre part, la collecte parfois se fait avec difficulté, notamment dans les décharges, puisqu'aujourd'hui nous n'avons pas encore de séparation claire du déchet plastique et du déchet organique.
Okay, so it's an opportunity to continuously sensitize the population and of course to call on the waste management company to actually help the population to begin separating their waste. I'm sure we are going to get there, but we are going to take a quick little break, and we spoke to some Cameroonians on what they are doing, what is their own contribution to protect Mother Earth. Watch this and we shall be right back.
Each time I eat, for example, the plastics, I don't throw the deads along the road. If I throw it in the farm or along the road, it will pollute the environment. What I do is that I keep it in my bag until I meet a trash can, then I will throw it.
Je dirais tout simplement à ceux-là qu'ils arrêtent de continuer à jeter des ordures un peu partout. Je crois que les autorités publiques font assez d'efforts pour mettre des bacs à ordures, que ce soit les plastiques ou autre chose.
Ici, on peut faire l'effort de ne pas imprimer trop sur le papier pour que ça puisse préserver un peu l'écosystème. On essaie de le faire. Mais de manière naturelle aussi, c'est de dire qu'il faut éviter par exemple d'utiliser beaucoup de plastique dans notre vie quotidienne. Un peu de ce genre, éviter de jeter les ordures, les bouteilles plastiques dans la rue. Cela permet de préserver aussi l'environnement. C'est de dire aussi à certains moments, il nous arrive de planter autour dans le jardin juste pour préserver l'écosystème. Ça aussi, il faut éviter de couper des arbres.
Most of us, when we drink outside or in the roadside, we throw bottles left and right. Because that is the first thing I'm seeing, that all of Douala, in the boreholes, we see bottles, many bottles in the boreholes. But we need that, oh God. Those people have put those things, the iron rod that they have fixed and put it as a dated bin that we should put. We all ourselves, if you drink, you don't have where to throw it. I have seen in Southwest, the place is too neat. Even the boreholes are neat. We in Douala, we should sit in that own. When we start with cleanliness in our own self, we see that all those bottles that we will drink will not throw in the boreholes.
Les mesures prises personnellement au quotidien pour préserver l'environnement, c'est déjà dans mon périmètre personnel, je vais dire mon domicile. Veiller à ce que l'endroit soit propre, veiller à ce que dans la mesure du possible, on recycle les déchets, pour ceux qui sont recyclables. Et puis les eaux usées, on essaie de les canaliser pour que ça n'aille pas chez les voisins.
Il faut respecter la forêt, il faut respecter les humains, il faut respecter les animaux, chaque chose est déjà à sa place. Là, je crois que l'environnement n'aura pas trop de soucis. Parce que si on commence à déplacer les choses n'importe comment, on sera obligé d'affecter l'environnement d'une manière générale.
On ne sait plus exactement à quelle période la saison sèche commence, à quelle période la saison pluvieuse commence. Je crois que c'est un exemple vraiment concret qui prouve que vraiment notre écosystème est en train de se dégrader et qu'il faut nécessairement qu'on fasse quelque chose pour le préserver, non pas pour nous, mais pour les générations futures.
Je fais l'effort de ne pas jeter les ordures un peu partout. Chaque fois que je mange, j'arrête mes ordures et je cherche la poubelle la plus proche. Et puis sensibiliser les gens autour de moi, ma maman dirait déjà les enfants à la maison, et puis les collègues. Et puis même quand dans la rue, quand quelqu'un jette quelque chose dans la rue, s'il faut l'interpeller, juste Si c'est quelqu'un qui paraît pas sauvage, mais ça c'est pas bon ça, justement.
Welcome back and thank you for staying on Canal d'Or International. We're going to continue with our discussions and I'm going to turn right back to Mr. Aaron to ask you. Now, most farmers in Cameroon rely on chemical fertilizers. Not only have chemical fertilizers become very expensive, but they are a menace to the soil, especially in the long term. And there are equally possible problems, health hazards that can be linked to the use of chemical fertilizer. Now, as somebody who is producing organic fertilizer from waste, household waste, why would you say it's important for farmers to switch to organic fertilizer?
Okay, before answering the question, I'd like to precise that by profession, I'm an agronomist.
Okay.
And that's one of the motivations.
That's interesting.
Okay. So, we can say organic agriculture is been gaining momentum worldwide, except in Africa. I can say not really, because in Africa we know our grandmothers were doing organic agriculture because they were
Break it down for our viewers. What do you mean when you talk about organic agriculture?
I mean zero chemicals.
Okay.
Pesticide zero, zero chemical fertilizer. Now we have used our soils for a long time, so we have to replace the nutrients. So now people are looking for more healthy food, means food that are free from contaminations.
Yeah.
Before starting our activity, we came to do a little survey.
Okay.
And now we have done a pilot project. And in the pilot project, we have gotten, we are really surprised by the number of demands that were available, because we're a little bit skeptical about it's good to produce, but are people ready to consume?
To consume it.
That's it. So we're surprised.
That's the question I was going to ask. How receptive is the Cameroonian public?
Very, because if you don't start, you won't know.
Okay.
We are based in the Bumbari area. Okay. So just on that environment, people were coming and asking, we are interested, how much did you sell? And so people are really interested to reduce the consumption of really organic fertilizer. Now the problem is, in our part now, the problem is to increase our capacity. Our production capacity in respect to demand.
To the demand.
Our pilot project went on well. We have all the statistics. We have a challenge in, as I was saying before, in the waste collection, because we don't, people don't have the culture of separating waste. Sometimes you tell people you want organic waste, but you
mix with everything plus iron.
Oh. So as you mentioned before, is the activity profitable? That's a big question mark, because we discovered that we need more manpower.
Okay.
To do the separation, because
because once you get this waste, you have to now start to separate it.
Separate.
It can be
because
very...
they are most of the time contaminated.
Okay.
So you have to separate it to have a pure product that will lead you to a pure final output.
Okay. Now I'm going to turn back to Mr. William Lemieux. Now, Cameroon produces 6 million tons of waste every year. And out of the 6 million tons of waste, we have about 600,000 tons of plastic waste. Most of this plastic waste is dumped in the Vuri River, which is one of the most polluted rivers in Africa after the Nile and the Niger River. You're laughing.
Yeah,
the question I want to ask is, how are plastics choking habitations and affecting biodiversity?
Yeah, I think I was laughing because the issue of being the most polluted river.
One of the most polluted after the River Nile and the Niger River.
Good. I think now that we're talking of one of the most polluted, I think I'll be more comfortable with that, because they're really more polluted rivers. Now, the plastics, take for example, plastic has pollution in the soil. First of all, plastic in the soil is a great hindrance to agriculture because it totally goes and closes the soil from anything you plant and access to water. It affects cattle and particularly areas of the north where you have these plastics, microplastic flying over. At times, animals confuse it with food and they eat it. Even at sea, they confuse it with food and they eat. They die immediately. Lots of sea animals are dying because of these plastics. Inland, offshore, like even in the areas where you don't find a lot of grasses, but you find plastics available, they eat and die. And then most of the soil today, we all know that plastic can take 200 years before getting degraded. That will mean if you're throwing a plastic today, your great-great-grandchildren will find the plastics in the soil. And so in terms of soil pollution, the situation is very alarming. In terms of water pollution, as you have said, it's very alarming because what you might have noticed is that when the plastic gets into the river or any sea, it actually goes right down. It takes in water and goes down. And if it is some light plastic, it just flies up and it is eaten by another sea animal. But it settles down into the river and it totally causes river pollution that will last for long. And so we're having a situation where most of the natural environment is disappearing. You will finally it will be difficult for you to go and dig a hole anywhere now,
and you don't see
plastic.
And
you don't see plastic.
Even in the farms, when you want to cultivate, you will
serious. In the farm, we often, in the past, for those who went to the farm, because I was in the farm.
I went to the farm too.
When you had to go to dig the ridges and so on, you had to actually remove stones and so on. But today you have to remove stones and plastics to really get some ridges that will be good for your crops. And farmers are finding it difficult more and more getting these farms clear off from this plastic pollution. So we are having a situation where if these plastics are not selectively separated, so what we call selective sorting, and directed to the circular economy, like in this case,
recycling,
in the next 50 more years when we're celebrating the 100th World Edition of the Environment Year, where I'm afraid we'll be having we might not be having, in terms of the square meters, in terms of the areas available for arable soil for agriculture, it will be very low.
That's
and our
alarming.
Children might not have enough space for agriculture.
Now, talking about the consequences, you've been talking much about the consequences of having plastics, which is a big menace to the environment, and you have just mentioned about our children, which brings me to my next question, and I'm going to turn back to Chris, because we are celebrating World Environment Day under the theme Only One Earth, and there's a call for people to live more sustainably in harmony with nature. Now, what do you say to people, to Cameroonians, about the need to cultivate, more friendly attitude towards nature, especially in your domain?
Alors, nous, du côté de Namé Recycling, on a donné la priorité à la jeunesse, parce que c'est celle-là notre avenir. Et c'est cette génération qui peut encore changer quelque chose. Donc nous allons dans les écoles principalement. Et ensuite, on n'oublie pas les adultes parce que c'est les adultes qui éduquent les enfants et du coup qui nous accompagnent dans cette logique-là et dans cette éducation-là. Et ensuite, je demanderais simplement à la population d'être plus responsable et que notre environnement, on le nettoiera ensemble. Namé Recycling, cette année, va retirer 5000 tonnes de plastique du Cameroun, mais vous avez donné un chiffre bien plus important. Et donc, Namé Recycling et tous les acteurs, seuls, ne peuvent pas le faire. C'est ensemble que nous réussirons à nettoyer, à sauver notre environnement. Et donc, cela passe par des éco-gestes simples, par un plastique qui ne doit pas se retrouver dans une rivière ou jeté dans la rue, doit être dans une vraie poubelle dédiée, privilégier la réutilisabilité, privilégier les éco-gestes séparés. Parce qu'aujourd'hui, et c'est un plaisir de voir qu'au Cameroun, on commence à recycler, pas seulement le plastique. Aujourd'hui, on est dans les déchets organiques,
Oui.
les déchets alimentaires. Donc, les séparer facilitera grandement le travail des recycleurs et ensemble, on réussira à créer un vrai espoir pour un environnement
for the
plus propre.
future generations. And that's very interesting. Calling a call to consciousness. That's how I call it to Cameroonians. And I'm going to turn back to you, Mr. Aaron. You are into the recycling of organic waste. Now, talk to us. The President of the Republic has always encouraged Cameroonians to go to the farms. I mean, what word of advice do you give to young people who are into agriculture, or even to older people, about the need to practice agriculture more sustainably?
Yes, before I go to that answer to your question, I would like to follow up with what Delegate just said before.
That's fine.
About the fact that our population have to take consciousness.
Okay.
The example being that we are into waste recycling. And when you go to someone who has waste that you were supposed to dispose it in a very unlawful manner, and you propose that you want to collect, he asks a fee.
Okay.
Which is, it's not sustainable for us.
Okay.
So just that simple gesture, you can advise people to, just that simple contribution goes a long way.
Okay.
If we start buying waste, then we won't make it.
Okay.
That would just say, it's okay. Now, to answer your question, how can we encourage youth, because now we are talking to the next generation, to do agriculture. First of all, we know agriculture is one of the most remunerative activity now, especially in Africa. We have thousands of arable land, fertile soil that needs just that need to be exploited. That need to be exploited. But then we need the resources. We need the training, because we don't just go to agriculture just because we like agriculture. We have to know what we're doing.
And how can the government be of help? We are wrapping up with the program. How can the government be of help?
Provide training and a little resource.
Okay.
Training is fundamental. Resources, when one has the training and the motivation, resources would come.
Okay.
So I hammered much on training, as what we are doing now. We have some youths that have showed interest of what we are doing, so we are planning to prepare a session for training, because this is a technology, new technology. Some countries like Kenya, they are very advanced in it. We are still behind. So we have much resources that are being wasted without the technology, because knowledge is first. Without knowledge, you can't do anything. So if these young Cameroonians have this knowledge, that they know they have a lot of resources that are lying idle in the environment, they don't have to take it and dedicate themselves, they will have a long way to go.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn back to you, Mr. Limwe. How do you convince Cameroonians to understand that they have a role in protecting the environment? We are talking about we have just one Earth, only one planet that is being inhabited by man. How do you convince Cameroonians to understand that they also have a responsibility to protecting the Earth?
The first thing to convince them is the statistics we have all raised here, and the fact that they themselves are being convinced every day. Take for example, when the company in charge of waste collection doesn't collect waste for 1 week, they see what is happening.
Exactly.
I think more sensitization and the fact that
basically what you're saying is that the warning signals are too many to be able to convince.
The warning signals are already there. We only need to count on journalists like you to keep on sending this message via all the medias, because people watch this type of information, telling them we only have one Earth. If we keep on consuming unsustainably, we will be surrounded very soon with the plastics around us. We'll be having heaps of organic waste around us, which is really not going anywhere, and we might not have anywhere to live, because if we don't make sure that the waste we produce is having a second life, we might not have another second place to give to our children for the near future. I think this is what we should get into.
Thank you so much. And on that note, we've come to the end of this very special World Environment Day edition of your favorite TV program, Planet Rise, presented by me as usual, Regina Liki Tandak. Thanking you for watching, and of course, take another rendezvous in a fortnight. But for now, it's goodbye and God bless. Thank you.